Commander Thexlar of the Viridian Collective stood before the Galactic Council chamber, his 6 manipulator appendages trembling with what the humans called excitement. The insectoid ambassador had just presented what he believed to be his greatest achievement, a containment facility housing 23 specimens of the galaxy's newest species. Distinguished members, Thexlar chittered through his translator, I have successfully secured multiple juvenile humans from the colony world of New Portland. They will serve as perfect subjects for our behavioral studies. The council chamber, a massive sphere containing representatives from 47 civilizations, fell into an unsettling silence. Ambassador Kreth of the Saurian Empire was the first to break it, his reptilian features contorting into an expression of pure horror. You did what? Kreth's voice boomed across the chamber. Thexlar's antennae curled in confusion. He had expected praise, perhaps even a commendation. Instead, the Saurian ambassador was rising from his seat, his scales shifting to a deep crimson, a color the Viridians had learned meant extreme agitation. You caged human children? Kreth repeated, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried further than his shout. Do you grasp the consequences of this? The Viridian commander's confidence wavered. They are merely specimens for study. We have provided adequate nutrition and... Adequate nutrition. The voice came from Ambassador Lyra Blackwood, the human representative who had been sitting quietly in the corner. She stood slowly, her face pale, her hands gripping the edge of her desk so tightly her knuckles had turned white. You took our children. Thexlar's antennae curled in confusion. He had expected praise, perhaps even a commendation. Instead, the Saurian ambassador was rising from his seat, his scales shifting to a deep crimson, a color the Viridians had learned meant extreme agitation. You caged human children? Kreth repeated, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried further than his shout. Do you grasp the consequences of this? The Viridian commander's confidence wavered. They are merely specimens for study. We have provided adequate nutrition and... Adequate nutrition. The voice came from Ambassador Lyra Blackwood, the human representative who had been sitting quietly in the corner. She stood slowly, her face pale, her hands gripping the edge of her desk so tightly her knuckles had turned white. You took our children. Lyra Blackwood remained standing, tears streaming down her face, but her voice was ice. They killed every pirate on that ship. Boarded it with their marines. And do you know what they did when they found out the child had been harmed? Thexlar couldn't speak. They traced the pirate organization back to its homeworld. They found every member, every collaborator, every individual who had known about the kidnapping and done nothing. Lyra's voice cracked. And then they made an example that the galaxy will never forget. 3 entire criminal syndicates ceased to exist in the span of a week. The crystalline observer, an ancient being who rarely spoke, chimed in with a sound like breaking glass. We tried to intervene. We called for diplomacy. The humans were polite. They thanked us for our concern. And then they continued. Kreth continued, you must understand, Thexlar. We have all studied human biology. We know they are predators. We know they evolved as pursuit hunters on a death world. But that's not what makes them truly dangerous. He gestured to Lyra. What makes them dangerous is their young. Humans don't lay eggs and abandon them like your people. They don't rely on hive instincts. Every human child is protected by not just its parents, but by every adult in their society. It's coded into their very DNA. There's a human saying, Zira added, her energy form flickering nervously. A mother bear protecting her cubs. But humans, they're worse. A human parent will sacrifice themselves for their child without hesitation. A human soldier will cross the galaxy for a child they've never met. Thexlar's confidence had completely evaporated. But we are protected by galactic law. We have rights. They cannot simply. Galactic law. Lyra laughed, but there was no humor in it. Commander, let me tell you something about my people and laws. We follow them. We respect them. We helped write most of them. But there is one law that supersedes everything we've written in the stars. She leaned forward. Touch our children, and there is no law. There is no diplomacy. There is only consequences. As if summoned by her words, the council chamber's sensors detected multiple FTL signatures emerging at the system's edge. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. The tactical display activated, showing the approaching fleet. It wasn't a military formation. It was everything. Warships, yes, but also civilian vessels that had been hastily armed. Colony ships. Trading vessels. Even scientific research craft bristling with weapons they had no business carrying. Kreth looked at the display and then at Thexlar. You took 23 children. The humans have brought 23 fleets. One for each child. The communication request came from the lead human vessel, the dreadnought USS Unbreakable. The face that appeared on the screen was Admiral Marcus Sullivan, a decorated veteran whose gray hair and weathered features spoke of countless battles. Viridian Commander Thexlar, Admiral Sullivan's voice was calm, which somehow made it more terrifying. You have 1 hour to return every child to us. Unharmed. Untraumatized. If even one of them has a nightmare about this experience, if even one of them sheds a tear. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Lyra stood beside the projection. Marcus, I'm here. I'll go with him to retrieve the children. Negative, Ambassador Blackwood, Sullivan replied. With respect, you're too close to this. Send the Saurian. We trust Kreth. Kreth and Thexlar transported to the Viridian facility. The children were indeed physically unharmed, kept in a sterile but comfortable environment. But their eyes showed fear. Kreth's heart sank. He'd seen human children before, on diplomatic visits to Earth. They were loud, joyful, endlessly curious. These children were silent, huddled together, watching their captors with wide, frightened eyes. The youngest, a girl who couldn't have been more than 6 Earth years old, was crying silently. When she saw Kreth, she whispered, Are you here to hurt us too? The Saurian ambassador, a being who had commanded armies and negotiated treaties that shaped the galaxy, felt something break inside him. No, little one. We're here to take you home. Your people are waiting. The children were returned within the hour. Medical teams examined each one. Counselors were standing by. Parents waited with the kind of patience that comes from knowing that the alternative to patience was violence. When the last child was confirmed safe, Admiral Sullivan addressed the Galactic Council. The Viridian Collective will pay reparations. They will face sanctions. But most importantly, they will ensure that this never happens again. Thexlar stood before the council, his career in ruins, his people facing isolation. But he had learned the most important lesson the galaxy had to teach: humans could be reasoned with. They could be negotiated with. They could be friends, allies, partners in building a better universe. But their children were sacred. And the galaxy would never forget what happened to those who failed to understand that simple truth. Epilogue. 6 months later, little Emma Rodriguez, the 6-year-old who had cried in that facility, stood at a school assembly on New Portland. She was receiving a medal from Ambassador Lyra Blackwood herself, a small silver star that represented the galaxy's promise to protect all children. When asked if she was scared of aliens now, Emma thought for a moment and then smiled. No. Mr. Kreth was nice. He got us home. But I don't think anyone's going to be mean to kids anymore. She was right. In the wake of what became known as the Children's Crisis, the Galactic Council passed the Juvenile Protection Accord. It had one simple provision: the young of any species were to be protected by all species. The humans had taught the galaxy something profound. Not through violence, though they had been ready for it. but through the simple, undeniable truth that some things were worth fighting for. And nothing was worth fighting for more than a child's safety.